The rain had been falling since morning, and by the time she reached the ridge road above Hallows Ford, it had turned to sleet. She had not planned to stop here. She had not planned to stop anywhere. For 3 years she had moved from valley to valley along the old courier trails, doing what work she could: fence repairs, roof thatching, the hauling jobs that the human settlements would grudgingly hand to an orc woman traveling alone. And then she had moved on before the looks could settle into something worse. She was used to it. She had learned not to want more than a dry corner and a meal. But her left boot had split at the sole that morning, and she had walked 6 hours with wet leather slapping the road. And now the sleet was sideways, and the ridge road above Hallows Ford had no shelter for another 4 miles. When she saw the lamplight in the window of the old courier post, 1 story, stone walls, a curl of wood smoke, she stopped. She stood in the road for a long moment. The light was warm. She had not thought much about warm light in a long time. She knocked. The man who opened the door was old. 68, maybe 70. She could never read human ages well. He was lean and white-haired, with the kind of face that had once been sharp and was now just quiet. He held a lantern in one hand and looked at her without flinching. Green skin, tusks, road-soaked, a pack on her back the size of a young calf. She was a head taller than him and probably twice his weight, and he looked at her the way a man looks at a fellow traveler caught in bad weather. "Come in," he said, "before you freeze." She hesitated. "I have coin for a night's lodging." "I'm not an inn." He stepped back from the door. "But there's a fire and I made soup an hour ago." She came in. His name was Aldrich Vane. He had been a courier and message carrier for 40 years on the mountain routes, the long cold runs between settlements that no one else wanted. And when his knees gave out, he had retired to the old post station that had been his northern waypoint. He had a dog named Barrow, a ginger and white mutt of no discernible breed who sniffed her hand once and then settled back in front of the hearth as if the matter were settled. He had a good fire, a pot of something that smelled of barley and salt pork, and shelves along 2 walls stacked with message books, the old paper records of every route and relay he had run. He set a bowl in front of her without ceremony. She sat at his table and ate, and he sat across from her with his own bowl and did not make conversation, which she appreciated more than she could say. The sleet ticked against the window. Barrow sighed in front of the fire. Outside the wind was picking up, and the road to the next settlement was genuinely impassable now. She could tell from the sound of it. When she had finished the soup, Aldrich refilled her bowl without asking. After a while he said, "Where are you heading?" "South, eventually." She wrapped her hands around the bowl. "No particular hurry." He nodded. She liked that he did not ask why. Most people asked why, and the why was the part she had no answer for that fit into a short conversation. He cleared the bowls and came back with 2 cups of something that turned out to be hot cider. He set hers down and sat, and she looked at the cup, and something about the plainness of it, the chipped rim, the warmth against her palms, the fact that he had done it without a second thought, made the back of her throat go tight. She had not expected that. "You all right?" he said. "Yes," she steadied herself. "Thank you for the fire." "It's a bad night." He looked at the window. "You're welcome to the cot in the back room. No charge. A woman shouldn't be on the ridge road in this." She should have said thank you and gone to sleep. That was what she would have done anywhere else with anyone else. But the fire was warm and the cider was good, and the dog had come to rest his chin on her boot, and something about the old man's face, the patience in it, the lack of agenda, made her say, before she could stop herself, "I lost my son." Aldrich looked at her. He said nothing. 3 years ago, on the Western Pass." She set down the cup. "He was 24. He was a runner fast, the fastest in our whole clan. He took a message run in the early winter and the pass closed behind him." She stopped. "They found him in the spring." "I'm sorry," Aldrich said. "He left me a voice message. It's what we do. Orcs don't write the way humans do. We carry words in memory. He recorded himself speaking to me before the run. 3 sentences, just 3. She looked at the fire. I've been carrying them for 3 years. I've never said them out loud to anyone because there was never anyone to say them to. The room was very quiet. The sleet had gentled to rain again. You don't have to, Aldrich began. I know, she looked at him, but I think I want to if you're willing to hear them. He set down his own cup. He folded his hands on the table. He looked at her with the steady attention of a man who had spent 40 years delivering other people's words and understood what it meant to carry something that needed to be received. Tell me, he said. She spoke her son's 3 sentences. She did not rush them. She said each one the way Davin had said them, his cadence, his breath between words, the small upward lift he always put at the end of a sentence even when it wasn't a question. She had held them so long and so carefully that nothing had worn away. When she finished, the fire snapped once. Aldrich was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "He sounds like he loved you very much." He did. Her voice was steady now. He was the best thing I ever did. Aldrich nodded. He reached across the table and poured more cider into her cup without asking. His hand was steady too. I had a son, he said after a while, Pell. He died 8 years ago. Fever took him in the summer. He was 31. He looked at his own cup. I kept the last letter he sent me. I've read it so many times the paper's gone soft. Same thing, isn't it? You don't want to let it go because it's the last piece of him that's still speaking. She looked at him. Yes, she said, that's exactly it. They sat with that for a moment. Outside, the rain had slowed to a steady, gentle sound, nothing like the earlier sleet. Do you have any other family? Aldrich asked. A sister in the south. That's why I'm heading there eventually. But we were never close, and she stopped. It's hard to go to someone who barely knew him and tell them you've been carrying his last words for 3 years and you need somewhere to put them down. Yes, he said, it is hard. He was quiet again then, but they've been put down now, at least once. She hadn't thought of it that way. She let it sit. And your wife, she asked. It seemed fair to ask, given what he'd shared. 12 years gone. The fever took her 2 different years, same cruelty. He said it without bitterness. The dog's good company, and I kept the roots. I still take the summer runs sometimes, just the short ones. My knees can manage short ones. She looked around the post station, the message books, the old route maps pinned to the wall above the desk, the brass relay hook by the door where riders had once handed off their packets. Everything worn but cared for. You kept it all, she said. Habit, he said, or stubbornness, probably the same thing. Something in the line of his mouth was close to a smile. A courier's post doesn't need to stop just because the courier's old. She looked at him for a moment. My son wanted to be a courier, not the clan's kind, the human routes, the long mountain runs. He thought they were the most important work in the world. She said it carefully, watching to see if the old man would flinch at that, an orc boy who wanted to run human mail. Some men did flinch. Aldrich didn't. Smart boy, he said simply. They are the most important work in the world. Nothing works without the message getting through. Her eyes stung. She blinked once. I'd have taken him on, Aldrich said. He meant it plainly as a fact. If he'd come to this post, I'd have given him the eastern leg. Good runners don't come along often. She looked at her hands for a moment. The fire was burning low, and the night had gone fully quiet outside, and she was aware suddenly of how tired she was, not just tonight but altogether, the accumulated weight of 3 years of carrying this alone. He would have loved that, she said. He would have been so proud. They sat in the warmth of that for a while. Before she went to the back room, she turned in the doorway. My name is Voreth, she said. Voreth Dunshen. His name was Davin. I'll remember that, Aldrich said. He said it the way a courier says a name he is carrying, with the full attention of a man who does not lose things. She slept better than she had in 3 years. In the morning the road was clear, and the sky was pale blue and scraped clean by the night's weather. and Barrow led her to the pump in the yard, and she washed her face in cold water and felt, for the first time in a very long time, like a person who had somewhere to be. Aldrich was in the kitchen. He had mended her boot during the night. She found it by the door, the sole restitched with waxed cord, the leather dried and treated. She stared at it for a moment and said nothing. He set out bread and hard cheese and the last of the cider, warmed, and they ate. She looked at the message books on the shelves. Have you ever thought about taking on a partner, someone to do the routes your knees won't manage? Aldrich looked at her. I'm strong, she said. I know 4 of the mountain passes. My son talked about them enough that I memorized the routes. I can carry twice a rider's pack without tiring. She kept her voice level. I know you don't know me. I'm not asking for charity. I'd work for fair pay in a corner to sleep in. He looked at her for a long moment. He had the courier's face, the face of a man who reads what is really being said. It's not charity I'd be offering, he said. I've needed a north leg runner for 2 years. My relay partner at Callow Crossing retired in the spring and I haven't found anyone worth the route. He picked up his cup. You'd have to learn the logging system, and Barrow will need to approve you properly. I only gave you the quick version last night. The dog, hearing his name, raised his head from the hearth. She looked at Barrow. Barrow looked at her. He stood up, walked across the room, and put his chin back on her boot. I think that's settled, Aldrich said. She sent word south to her sister, not soon but someday. There was no hurry. The southern road would be there. That evening, before the light went, Aldrich showed her the message books. How the routes were logged, how the relay marks worked, how a courier's record was kept so that nothing was ever truly lost. Every name, every settlement, every word carried faithfully from one hand to the next. She sat at the old desk and went through them carefully, and he stood behind her and pointed out the entries, and once he said, Davin, that's a courier's name, and she looked up at him with something that had no word for it except warmth. She wrote Davin's name into the margin of the newest book, small and careful. Aldrich saw it and did not say a word, only set her cup beside the book and went to tend the fire. Outside, the mountain road was empty and silver in the last light. Somewhere on the eastern leg, a rider was probably pushing through the dusk with a packet of words that needed to reach someone by morning. She would be the one who made that run tomorrow. She already knew the route. She sat at the desk a little longer after Aldrich went to tend the fire, her hand resting beside the message book. For 3 years she had carried her son's last words because words unspoken to anyone simply went nowhere. They circled. They came back at odd hours on an empty road in the middle of a night when the work was done and there was nothing left to fill the quiet. A message that never reaches anyone is still a weight on the carrier. She knew that. Any courier knew that. But last night the words had reached someone. They had been heard and received and held carefully, the way Aldrich held every message he had ever run, not as an obligation, but as a true thing that deserved to arrive safely. He had given that to her without knowing he was giving it. He had only opened the door and poured the cider and folded his hands and said, "Tell me." That was all it took. She understood now why her son had wanted to do this work. She closed the message book gently. In the spring, when the high passes opened, she would take the northern leg that Aldrich's knees could no longer manage, and the settlements up there, the logging camps, the waypoints, the small communities that waited all winter for word from the outside world, would learn that there was a new carrier on the route, and that the messages would still get through. Davin would have loved it, she was sure of that now.